Hi everyone, this is Kai. Today I'm going to talk about Lee Jung and his crazy English. You probably have already heard about him. I believe that his crazy English is a very effective way for Chinese speakers to improve our English accent. So who is Lee Jung? He is a crazy man, a successful man. He pretty much taught himself English. Now I will let Lee Jung introduce himself to you.
My name is Lee Jung, and I graduated from London University and majored in mechanical engineering. I was once a poor student of English, and it was my biggest headache and troublemaker. I got sick and tired of learning boring grammar rules and lifeless words. But through hard work in practicing speaking English and breaking away from the traditional grammar games, I found myself a totally different, exciting new world. Not only did I pass Band 4 and Band 6 college English exams very easily with high marks, but more importantly, I began to use English. Finally, I developed a new language cracking system myself. I began to teach German not long after I started learning this terribly difficult language in my own way. It was a miracle, but I made it.
In 1994, Lee Jung turned his unorthodox language learning method into a profitable enterprise known as Lee Jung Crazy English. And by 2008, approximately 30 million people have attended at least one Crazy English lecture. And there is a documentary movie about Lee Jung and his crazy English. Here is a screenshot of Lee Jung shouting one of his favorite motivational slogans.
Crazy English, crazy life, crazy work, crazy study. Be crazy every day, every minute, everywhere. I love this crazy game, crazy work, crazy study, crazy every day, everywhere, every time. I want to be crazy. I love this crazy game. Let's join this crazy game. Crazy world, crazy study, crazy English, crazy study, crazy everything, crazy every day. I love this crazy game.
Lee Jung's lecture typically averaged 20,000 to 30,000 audience members per event. Let me show you some photos. Lee Jung has lectured in sacred places such as the Forbidden City and the Great Wall. To give you a better idea, I'm going to play some video clips.
Never let your country down. Never let your country down.
There have been a lot of controversies surrounding Lee Jung. I believe that he is an enthusiastic teacher, a motivational speaker, a performer, a salesman, but he's not a crook, because his crazy English does work. Lee Jung's unconventional method of learning English involves shouting English phrases at the top of his voice at rapid speed while waving his hands and arms. It includes rules such as speak loud, speak fast, and speak clearly. Lee Jung emphasizes the repetition of words and sentences so that the oral muscles and the brain become accustomed to making unfamiliar English sounds. Lee called this tongue and muscle training. Lee Jung once said the tongue is an important organ for speaking. Some muscles in the tongue used to pronounce English words have withered in Chinese, so we need to shout to restore them. Why is crazy English an effective method? First, we have to understand the sources of Chinese accent. Many Chinese people, including me, have a terrible accent speaking English. The first reason is that we have a totally different phonological inventory. There are sounds in English that are not used by Chinese speakers. And the second reason is the difference in phonotactic constraints. Chinese language has its specific rules of permissible sound sequences, which are different from those of the English language. And the third and most important reason is the fact that Chinese is a tonal language with a complex tone system. The way the voice goes up and down during the production of the vowel is encoded in the word. If you change the tone, the meaning also changes, even if all the other sounds are exactly the same. In contrast, English is not a tonal language. Instead, it assigns stress to one syllable of every word. Chinese speakers might have trouble producing the correct stress, and subconsciously, they might be looking for the tone, which does not actually exist in English. According to linguistic studies, acquiring a foreign language necessitates the accurate perception of not only novel segmental properties of the target language, but also super-segmental ones such as intensity, duration, pitch, etc. Since English and Chinese are so different, there is no better way to practice other than by imitating native English speakers and by repeating until you get it right. By speaking loud, fast, and clearly, one's English gets better and better. Crazy English also has a psychological component to it. Lee Jung desires his students to have passion in their English studies. He encourages his students to fulfill their dreams and to give 100% of themselves to their personal goals without the fear of losing face. In his lecture, he would have students shouting with him, "I love losing face. I love this crazy game." Lee Jung is no doubt an enthusiastic teacher and a motivational speaker. In a YouTube video, the US linguist Professor Stephen Krashen explained the psychological factors key to the success in language acquisition.
Our research in language acquisition has concluded that there are several factors that relate to success in language acquisition, and I'm going to list them here on your screen. One factor is motivation. Students who are more motivated do better in language acquisition. Second, self-esteem. Probably the dominant concept today in popular psychology. Students with more self-esteem, more self-confidence do better in language acquisition. Third, anxiety. And here the correlations are negative. The lower the anxiety, the better the language acquisition. This has happened to you. Have you ever been in a situation, speaking a language that you may not speak very well, when the conversation gets so interesting, you temporarily forget that you're using another language? If this is happening to you, that's when you're acquiring. When your focus is completely on the message, what the other person is saying, and your anxiety is temporarily gone. For language acquisition to succeed, anxiety has to be directed somewhere else, not at the language. Frank Smith puts it this way: for the child to develop literacy, the child has to assume that she's going to be successful. The way we integrate this into the theory is like this. If the student isn't motivated, if self-esteem is low, if anxiety is high, if the student is on the defensive, if the student thinks the language class is a place where his weaknesses will be revealed, he may understand the input, but it won't penetrate. It won't reach those parts of the brain that do language acquisition. A block keeps it out. We call this block the affective filter. Here's how it works. Somewhere in the brain, Chomsky tells us, is a language acquisition device. Our job is to get input into the device. So that's input here. Low motivation, low self-esteem, high anxiety, the block goes up, the filter goes up, and the input cannot get in. This explains how it can be that we can have two children in the same class, both getting comprehensible input. One makes progress, the other doesn't. One is open to the input, the other's closed. Let me now try to summarize everything I've said in the last 10-15 minutes or so. We acquire language in one way, and only one way, when we get comprehensible input in a low anxiety environment.
Lee Jung's Crazy English motivates students and increases their self-esteem. By helping students to conquer the fear of losing face, anxiety of making mistakes is greatly reduced. To summarize, Crazy English effectively helps Chinese speakers to overcome segmental and super-segmental differences between English and Chinese. At the same time, it helps students to conquer psychological barriers in language acquisition. This method requires a certain level of craziness, but if you are committed to study English the Crazy English way, it will promise you crazily effective results. Thank you for watching and see you next time.